Welcome to another episode of the Scouting for Growth podcast that dives into what it really takes to build and scale a successful business in today's competitive landscape. Today, I am thrilled to have a special guest, yes, as always, and this one has cracked the code on architecting and scaling businesses from idea to exit. Her name is Beate Chelette. She is known as the growth architect, and her journey from being a broke mom, immigrating with $135,000 in debt, to selling her business to Bill Gates for millions is nothing short of an inspiration. In our everyday work, Beate equips visionary leaders with proven strategies, blueprints, and growth maps to improve their business systems, strengthen their leadership skills, and scale their impact, especially in challenging times. And as you know, I do a similar work with my venture labs where I help big businesses build blueprints, playbooks, and capability to help them industrialize and commercialize with scale up, startup, grown ups. But Beate has actually worked with growth companies. She has worked with both giants like Amazon and also bootstrapped startups, and has done though with acquiring a knack for uncovering hidden opportunities and crafting actionable strategies for success. A five-star success blueprint framework provides a roadmap for navigating the crucial stages of building, growing, and scaling a business. In this episode, Beate shares a hard-won wisdom on what it takes to pressure test your idea, build a solid foundation, and scale your business sustainably. She reveals the most common pitfalls she sees founders making at each stage and how to avoid them. Whether you are a startup founder seeking funding, a corporate innovator trying to launch a new venture, or a small business owner looking to unlock growth, this episode is packed with insights and strategies you can put into action immediately. So get ready to take notes as we dive into architecting and scaling your business with the one and only growth architect, Beate Chelette, on this episode of the Scouting for Growth podcast. Beate, welcome. Hi, Beate. Thank you so much for joining me on Scouting for Growth.
I'm excited to be here, Sabine, or Sabine. The German in me wants to call you Sabine, so forgive me, but I'm really excited to be here.
Okay, both names works. I work with a lot of German insurance companies as well, so I'm used to see my name pronounced either the French way or the German way.
Yes, exactly.
So, Beate, thank you so much for joining me. And to get started, I wanted to know about you, your career, and how you became a growth architect. I understand from reading about you that you actually are in the United States, but you are coming from somewhere else. So it would be great to understand your path. And you also experience some, entrepreneurial situations that often get us to think differently about us and our business. Tell us a bit more, and also how you got to meet Monsieur Bill Gates.
Oh, absolutely. And yes, that would be the understatement of the year, entrepreneurial things. It was a big fat challenge, a 13-year challenge. So as Sabine said, my name is Beate Chelette. I'm known as the growth architect. I live currently in Los Angeles, but I'm originally from Germany. And I came to Los Angeles because I really had two reasons. Number one, I had a very difficult upbringing, childhood with, some abuse. So the real story is I needed to get away from my mother as far as I could. The salon version that I keep telling is that I left to find adventure, and I've not had a boring day since. And I guess in some way, both of these stories really are true. I am originally a photographer, a trained photographer. So I went to photography school and I started working as a photographer in Germany. I became photo editor at Elle Magazine. And I always liked working with a lot of creative, if you so want to, non-conforming, colorful people that had big ideas and they needed somebody to help them land the plane. And then I left Germany and moved to Los Angeles to become, well, I don't even know what I wanted to become, but I wanted to become something that was a definition that was outside of the prestige of a magazine like Elle. Because the truth of the matter is, Sabine, when you are a photo editor or you work for a prestigious corporation or something with a really big name, people will do all kinds of things for you.
Yeah.
It's not that this isn't about you. It's about
No.
the position that you hold. And it I was 23, and then I thought, well, everybody loves me, until I realized they didn't love me. They loved the position that I held and what I possibly could do for them. And so I wanted to do something that put me in charge of my own life and shed my past, reinvent myself, and become a person I liked and a person other people liked. Because if you really want to know the truth, I don't think I was very likable at the time. And I then started working for a company that worked until there was a massive recession that hit. I'm de facto unemployable, Sabine. And so I had to figure out how to
Like
become,
overnight, like this.
yeah, pretty much overnight. I mean, the recession, obviously, a recession is in place. And it's not unlike what we see right now, that people get laid off. A lot of people get laid off. A lot of your contacts suddenly are having the looking for work, sign out, and people are in a position where they are no longer in a position to help you because now they need you to help them, and you can't really help them because you're fighting for survival on your own.
Yeah.
And then you just don't get the kinds of jobs, and the budgets are tighter. And then suddenly things don't make economic sense for my employer. And he let me go, and he said, you can take the photographer representation business with you, and good luck. And so there were no jobs. So I had to figure out how to be an entrepreneur on my own with a then 6 months old baby. And that was a really rough road. And then from there on, for 13 years, I went through everything that we read about that happens to other people. I went through a divorce. My husband was an alcoholic and a pathological liar, but I didn't find this out soon enough. And next thing, I'm with a small child in a country that's not my own, trying to figure out how to make it work with a business that is brand new, that I don't have any idea how to really run. And that was that. And so I became I continued with a photography representation, and I continued with photography production. I got ahead. I had like $300,000 in revenue. Then I fell back. Then I had 500 and I fell back. Then eventually I'm at the $1 million mark, so I'm in the top 4% of all entrepreneurs that ever get to a gross revenue of $1 million. And I was working for clients like Levi Strauss, Wrangler, Mercedes-Benz, and a lot of people from London, a lot of people from France, from Europe would come to Los Angeles and have me produce their photo shoots. And that was a great, great time. First one out in the morning, last one in, models, photographers, clothes, catalogs. It was La Bon Marché. So they were really amazing, amazing clients. And then one day I realized that there was something going on with my key employee, and I fired her. And I found out I fired her too late because she had come up with a business, which was my business without me. And next thing I know, my invoices that I had waited to get paid on were paid to them because they came up with all kinds of things. And so I sued them. So I'm in this big lawsuit, completely naive what that actually means. And I'm going deep, deep, deep into debt. But I'm thinking, a couple months later, production season is rolling around. My books are flush. I'm having Wrangler come back and Levi Strauss come back. And then I wake up and it's September 11th. And in one
Wow.
day, it was over.
Oh my goodness.
In one day.
In one day.
In one day.
And so, what did that mean? I want to understand what that means because you had a very successful photography business with amazing client list. And then we have, the 9/11. And then overnight, there's no more photography. And so what did that mean for you? What did you do? Where did you go? I mean, how did you survive?
Well, that was then the big question because at the point, I was 130 $30,000 in debt from the lawsuit, and I had fully counted on this production to come through this production season to carry me cash flow wise through whatever it took to settle this lawsuit, and that just wasn't going to be the case anymore. So I'm heading toward bankruptcy now because that I can't afford to keep the lawsuit going, but we are in the middle of it. We are getting very close to jury selection, and we find out that it wasn't just her and the person she did this with, but it was one of the largest insurance companies in America that had done a group insurance for photographers. And under this group insurance, errors and omissions are covered. So they had full coverage from their insurance company. And I always said, I didn't realize that plain out lying and stealing is covered under insurance, but apparently it is. And so now I'm flying to Germany and I go, well, things are getting a little bit rough here, but I'm holding on, I'm holding on, I'm holding on. And the lawsuit settles a couple months later. And when I paid all my debt and paid my attorney, and paid my credit cards, I literally walked away. I think I had like $5 left in my account. That was it. So I fought this entire year. I spent $130,000. Whatever settlement I got was enough to pay my attorney, to pay my debt. And then I was at zero. So I could have saved myself this time. So the lesson here is before you need to be right, be very careful what you're getting yourself into, because this could be the fight for your life that at the end of the day is a fight for nothing, because it was a fight for nothing. And then I go back into debt because now I'm having this idea on building up the stock photography syndication for architectural and interior images and for celebrity homes, and things are going well, but I'm spending more money than I'm making. So I'm going back into debt. So now I'm $135,000 in debt again. But, I have a great idea. People really like the material. I'm selling it in all kinds of places all over the world, but the debt's really dragging me down. So now I'm going to Germany, drumming up some business again, going to an international conference, meet my dad. My dad has a stroke, Sabine. My dad didn't have a stroke. My dad had pancreatic cancer. So 6 weeks later, my father, my biggest supporter, my number one cheerleader, dies. Now, I'm at the grave in Nether Bavaria in this like picturesque town with I think 23,000 people that live there, and you overlook the valley and it's this gorgeous view, and you have the Baroque 14th century church behind you, and the church bell rings, and we just had buried my dad. My phone rings, and it's my office in Los Angeles, and they're telling me that we've just been served a notice while I was gone, so I'm losing the house. And in this moment, when we always talk about defining moments
Yeah.
or WTF is the plan here, I fell to my knees, Sabine. I raised my fist. I yelled at God and I said, okay, fill me in here. Like, what is the plan? Because this just, it just made no sense that one person, a single mom, no less, as an immigrant in Los Angeles, just fighting and fighting and fighting. And in between, we have fires, floods, riots, earthquake, September 11th. Then, there was a tsunami that came where I lost one of my key vendors. I mean, these weren't small hits. These were massive, massive, massive
Event.
hits.
Yeah.
Big. And then I surrendered and I said, there's literally nothing else I can do. I'm going to have to just let this go, because if it's not meant to be, I had done everything. I've turned every stone. I rubbed every nickel together. There was no more money to be had. There was nowhere to go. And I let it go. I said, okay, fine. I'm going to look for a bankruptcy attorney again. And I come back, I get a letter from the White House, not too long after that. The White House. The White House, the President of the United States sends me a letter. Now, of course, the president never saw the letter. It was like some mailroom intern. But it put me in touch with the Small Business Administration. And that's an organization here in Los Angeles that's helping small business owners to run their business, specifically getting funding. So they helped me to find a bank that was going to restructure my debt, which was all in credit cards and incredibly high interest rates, and they put it to in one fixed 10-year loan that was a lot more overseeable, that freed up my line of credit, my line of credit. And 3 months later, I'm break even. That's how
Oh,
close we were between bankruptcy and break even. It was 3 months, Sabine.
incredible.
Isn't
Incredible.
that, isn't that nuts?
Yeah, but
And
it looks like luck turned when you receive that letter and you needed
I
that letter
mean,
to arrive. We just, praying to God and it happened.
it truly is like that. And then 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category, and I'm selling celebrity at home stores like they're croissants in Paris. And I I hadn't even planned on these celebrity homes, but I had gone after A-list photographers, and A-list photographers went after, we're working with A-list celebrities and A-list architects and A-list interior designers because they were all going in the same circles.
Hmm.
And then and that's what made me the world leader. And then a Bill Gates company comes and says to me, "How do you do it?" And I said, "I'm not going to tell you. You want it, you buy it." And they said, "Fine. How much do you want?" I said, "I want a couple $1 million." And they said, "Okay." And next thing I know, I'm doing a transaction with no other than Bill Gates himself, who privately held this company, and I become a self-made multimillionaire 18 months after the worst moment of my life.
I just want to, getting chill in my back because it's an amazing story. It's a scary story because this is a story which happens to a lot of entrepreneurs. Right now, we are still in very uncertain times. And even in United Kingdom and Europe, there is a lot of startups who are going to go into bankruptcy because they cannot raise funding right now. And so we need those stories which have happy hands as well. But so I have a curious question to ask you. It's more around curiosity. How is that market going, around photography, celebrity homes? I can see because we are all remote working and all hybrid working, the world of photography and finding a way to be present out there is still very important. Are you still close to this world? And what is your prediction around where this is going?
Yeah, I mean, when I sold, I knew that the business was going to change because let's face it, photography content's become a complete commodity, and I saw the writing on the wall. So when I sold, I knew that going back into the business, I did that for a while as a consultant, and I consulted photographers. The problem with photography and creatives oftentimes is they really don't want to learn the business. They want to learn the craft, and they think if they're really, really good at their craft, then somehow the business magically falls into place. But you and I know that's not the case,
No.
which is why you and I are both in the business of helping, people with big ideas land planes and make ideas happen and give them some process and structure, because a good idea is nothing unless somebody
Your
wants it
system.
or
Yeah.
wants to
And it's
buy it,
all
right?
about the systems, right? As you said.
It always is about the systems. And, as a creative, the reality of it is you're in your creativity 30% of the time and 70% in business. And I think people try to be in the creative world because they don't ever want to be in the business side of things, only to find out that they've now been hit with a double whammy. So the successful creative has to be creative and they have to understand the business. Now, somebody who isn't creative and is just in business only needs to master one skill. So the creative really has gotten two strikes against them in order to be successful. And that's, I love that because to me, it is very obvious to see how we can help creatives and how we can take these ideas and make them happen. So I saw that this was happening. So I was consulting for a while, but there was just not real money in it because the business was eroding, the fees were eroding. We saw a lot of digital images and reuse of images and alteration, retouching of images. So very fewer and fewer new materials needed to be created, and that's where the money really was. Or in the high-end celebrity homes, that's where the money was. And I eventually stopped the business, the photography business altogether. And if you look at it right now with what's going on with AI and image creation,
Yeah.
um, creativity has taken a completely different route. It's no longer about taking something that exists and making it look good, but it is almost like an imaginary world that we are creating now. So it's just a completely different business. I think it will start to add different layers of where we're going with the visual arts, and people will have different jobs. People will be, qualified prompters, that prompt architects for companies to create visuals. So that's going to be the creativity, but that's very different than sitting and drawing something. So it just uses, I think, different parts of the brain. So
Engineering,
that's why
right?
exactly, it's an engineering brain, much so. So they all should be coming to you, if I'm as far as I'm concerned with this. And that's, I think, what's changing in the industry now is that creativity will never go away. And creativity can never go away, no matter how much, the right wings believe that it's all about rules, and things have to be done a particular way, and we have to stay in the good old ways. You can't curb creativity. There's always going to be creative people, and innovation is driven by creativity. So we have to keep creativity alive, because creativity fuels what comes next. And some of the stuff that's being created today, Sabine, is just unbelievable. I mean, you look at this and you go like, how'd you even come up with this?
Yeah, I agree. So I think you're absolutely right. Creativity is going to be crucial. And regardless of what is happening in the prompt engineering world, creativity is still going to be there. I believe that our soft skills are going to become the differentiators in the world we are entering. Creativity, problem solving, and decision making cannot be done by a computer. And so being able to actually connect the dots in a different way will be critical in the world we are entering. But I'm much more curious to hear, Beate, what is a growth architect in your world? And what got you to launch the Woman's Code and what it is?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I'm going to just stay with what you said just for one more second. I agree with you 100%. So I'm a fan of this like American TV show FBI. And I've been noticing that the writing has become so unbelievably predictable, and that the dialogue is so trite, that I can promise you that that's written at least 80% by AI, because it just sounds so boring. And, the pendulum always swings both ways. So if you listen to this and you have creative ideas, I don't think you need to worry, because I will tell you that I'm losing very quickly interest in something that has absolutely no depth, or
Yeah.
there's no surprise here. I could have written that script. Oh, that's right, because I did write this script because I'm feeding AI with my ideas. So it's coming up with this like joint idea. So you must not despair. There will be plenty of opportunity, because it's just unbelievably boring. But back to your question of what is a growth architect. So I came up with this idea of the growth architect because I looked at when you are building something, you're architecting something. So when you're building something, you decide, where is it going to be? How big does it need to be? How is that? Where's the house facing? Where do I want the sunset? Where do I want the sunrise? Do I want a patio? How many people need to be living in it? Am I going to build a log cabin? Am I going to build a modern or a contemporary house? Am I going to go traditional? What kind of roof do I want? So you have to make a lot of decisions when you build a house before you can move in. And then even when the house is built, you still have more decisions, because then the question is, are the walls going to be blue, or are they going to be green? So for me, as a growth architect, I built the blueprint so that you can build your house, and then you can furnish it any way you want. But I advise you in every step of the way to say, yes, you want to build a house. That's great. What kind of house? Where is it going to be? And so that we can make all these decisions in order. So if you've ever seen a house being built, there's a very, very specific order in how you build a house. You have to you have to dig a hole, you have to pour the foundation, you have to put the ground floor in, or the basement in first, before you put the basement, the first floor on. And then after the first floor comes the second floor, and then you have to frame it, and then there's drywalling, and I mean, it literally has to go in certain different steps. And growth architecture is the same way. So we do this for our clients, for people that have ideas that need to land planes, but and have some of these pieces, they know kind of what it is, and they maybe have a couple people that have a couple of ideas, but they are not entirely sure, what order these steps come in. So we help them to build them in order. So people come to me for three particular steps. So they either want to build it, they want to grow their business, and they need a system and processes, which is very much along the lines of what you do, helping people to really get clear on how do we get from growth to then the next step, which is scaling, where then we make the business owner obsolete and make the business run by itself. So that's the growth architect. And then I founded the Women's Code, and I founded the Women's Code many years ago after I sold my business, for the reason that I felt that women just don't have a code amongst ourselves. And if you look out in the market and you see what women are allowing to happen to women's rights, and what women are allowing and participating and fostering and being taken away from us, that we fought for 50, 60 years, is shocking to me. Absolutely shocking that we are seeing such a reversal and an anti-woman movement. But the last time I saw it was in the 80s under Ronald Reagan. That's when a lot of this stuff happened, when all the DEI programs,
Yeah.
diversity, equity, inclusion programs, were dismantled. When
And it is
the
happening
term,
again now, actually, Beate, because
it's the worst.
sustainability, right? Sustainability, ESG. So the S of ESG is social innovation, and include, DI. And a lot of companies still do not know how to approach this. And so there's always this confusion between diversity and inclusiveness, and then equity, being equal in some ways, on pay, around different matters. And I think because of greenwashing, a lot of companies have stopped even talking about it right now.
They're actually actively dismantling it. There is a law in Texas that was passed where if you say it, you can be sued. It's illegal to assume that somebody who's a minority automatically is in a disadvantage,
Correct.
which as you and I know, pardon me, is ludicrous, because the entire idea of DEI always has been that we know not everybody has access to the same opportunity. Some people need a little bit extra help to get to the opportunity. That doesn't mean that they don't know how to take care of the opportunity once they are there, but they're just not at the right table. And here in Los Angeles, if we think about it, I live in the Pacific Palisades, which is a very prestigious area where there's a lot of celebrities. Kurt Russell is here, Goldie Hawn is here, Adam Sandler is here. We run into them, at the local coffee shop. And don't tell me that somebody who lives in South Central Los Angeles or Idaho or Ohio or Mississippi or somewhere has the exact same opportunity as somebody who is in this particular setting. So that's kind of how we have to look at this, from the perspective of, we are not going backward to pretending like we're all equal. I mean, technically we're all equal because we are all living here, but we don't have the same opportunities. And that's what this is all about. So I had created the Women's Code in order for women to be really understanding the first step of achieving this is that we have to support each other.
Correct. 100%. And how is the Women's Code evolving? How big it is? What has the impact of your initiative been?
It's been an interesting and a painful thing at the same time. So when I started it, I did a lot of talking. I did a lot of keynotes. I went to Silicon Valley. I talked about women leadership. I talked about what equality really means, that equality means the equivalent. We talked about that, men always bring this example of that men are the ones who are building roads and laying the bricks on the streets. And I said, that's really not true. Most men don't do that. It's a very small percentage of men. So you kind of can't say, because I'm a man, I can take credit for the work other men do. That's ridiculous. And somebody who is 60 years old is certainly not going to be pouring asphalt or cement somewhere. They're in a different kind of a job. So I always found these arguments very, very jarring. And so the women's code, in the shortest sense, was really designed to help women to first figure out we need to have a code amongst ourselves. And then what kind of language do we use? What kind of non-confrontational language do we use to help men to understand that we're not after them or we are not on a war path.
Yeah.
We simply are defining what it means to have the equivalent, and that a lot of the conversations are just really flawed. And then the Me Too movement came. And then in the aftermath of the Me Too movement, when the accusations had reached their heights, there was such a backlash to the Me Too movement. And then I, unfortunately, in the Women's Code, got caught into it. And YouTube specifically served me up as the token feminist to men who hated women, who went through the divorces, had been sued. And there's a pretty strong movement at the time that was doing that. And next thing I know, I wake up to death threats and hate messages, and I have tens of thousands of views, and I mean thousands of name calling. It was really, really brutal. And I had to make a conscious decision to step away from this for a little bit because it just frankly got too dangerous. I mean, my husband said to me, I don't want to open the house the front door and see somebody with a gun wanting to shoot you because you talked about that women should get paid the same amount of money for the same amount of work. He says, is it worth it for you? And I had to really step back and say, I'm going to have to let this cool off. And it is just now that we are starting to go back out and redefining what what the women's code what the women's code really is. But it is a very hostile climate toward women right now, very much so.
I heard this from some clients of mine, and I think also minorities as well. The climate is very uncomfortable for many at the minute. So let's just go back into a positive conversation, which is about you as a growth architect. And I love the term architect because I think it's much truer around the fact that it's about putting your hands dirty and getting the job done. I was just talking last week with one of my clients, a German insurer, who actually told me, Sabine, we don't recruit consultants. And I said, we don't do consulting, so thank you. I think there's a fear when we actually work with clients nowadays is just giving advice. But actually, what the work is about is really putting our hands dirty and really helping them shape a solution, as you said, a blueprint and a playbook that they can take, evaluate, but also embed into their business, and then do the iterative thinking to actually adapt the model every year as the market changes. So I would love to hear about your 3 key stages of your framework and how you are helping businesses out there to drive growth for their business.
Yeah, I like this. I like what you said. A lot of people are so afraid for outside influence or outside advice because they somehow seem to think that there's a reward for doing everything on your own. So let's just get that out of the way. There's no reward for you doing everything on your own. I have yet to walk through a cemetery and it says anyone, any tombstone did everything by himself or did everything by herself, right? When people talk about accomplishments, they talk about great team players, about how much they were loved by other people. So keep in mind, again, just in case you missed it, there is no reward for doing everything on your own. There just really, truly isn't. So we look at this from the perspective and say, what's the simplest possible way we can break this down for you to understand what the steps are without being overwhelmed? Because a lot of people make it purposely overcomplicated because then you need them more. So I don't believe in that. So the 3 elements, the 3 essential elements of growth really, or, how to be successful really are. Number 1, it's always mindset. That's where it starts. What are you thinking about? How are you thinking? Are you practicing clean thinking? Is there friction in your thinking? If you can't envision your success, if you don't see this clearly, how can anybody else do it? The first question, and I bet you asked the same question, Sabine, what do you want? If you cannot answer that, then you cannot get that. So that's where we start. It's like in our head. The second piece is then we want to figure out now what do we want? What is the strategy that we are using? And there's a lot of conversations around strategy. Some people say there's only one main strategy, everything else is a tactic. I don't think that's semantics. It doesn't matter what you call it. But to me, I feel that there is a marketing strategy and there's a sales strategy and there is a growth strategy. So they just have to all build on each other. The tactics are how you execute on the different items. And then from the strategy, then that means that you're going into growth. So the third element is growth. You always have to think about, am I growing or am I stagnant? And the reason growth is so important, so the example I want to give your audience is oftentimes people are very hesitant to commit to changes or to commit to growth initiatives or to some of the things that we've agreed to say, well, let me just try this a little bit and I see how it goes. So I want you to imagine you walking in the Tuileries, or you walking at the Champs-Élysées, or you walking in Central Park, or you walking uh, uh, in Hyde Park, and you see an oak tree, and the oak tree only has 100 leaves because the oak tree says, you know what, this is way too complicated. I'm just going to do a slow rollout on this. I'm just going to do 100 leaves. If the birds come, the people admire my 100 leaves, and I'm going to do a slow rollout for the rest of the season. I don't want to really spend too much time and energy. So when you look at what the laws of nature are, there is no hesitation in any law of nature. Nature is all in. It either grows or it dies. There's nothing in between. So if you think that in your business or in your decision making, you can counteract these very simple laws of nature, science, physics, then you're achieving the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. So you must commit, and that's where consultants really come in, because we create the plan and we make sure the plan is doable, and then we create accountability and we help you to really see what are the steps that you need to be taking. So that's how we look at the three elements of success is, again, it is mindset, strategy, and then a growth.
That's super. And so what are the common mistakes you see amongst the founders, the entrepreneurs, the businesses you're working with? How do you help them get that realization to achieve their goals?
I think the biggest enemy of an entrepreneur is their own ADD. It's their entrepreneurial ADD, or it's an idea addiction. They are, because a lot of entrepreneurs become very successful because they have a lot of ideas, they are addicted to their own ideas. And instead of giving it enough time and having a plan and then executing it, they give it a little bit and then they change it and then they start all over again. And so they keep changing and starting over and over and over and over and over again. So we, in growth architecture, we came up with a very simple concept. So I want you to think about it. I actually tell the story. I said, if you ever been to Paris and you walked by a patisserie and you have the smell of the baguette, you want to go in, you want to get the baguette, and it's the best baguette ever. And then you just want to shove it in your mouth and eat the whole thing. But what you really do is maybe break off a little piece right then and there because it is just too good. And then you take it home and then you have a little bit for breakfast with some butter and jam. And then you have something with lunch with the salad. And then you make garlic bread for your dinner. I mean, and you still get to eat the whole thing. It's just not all at once. So that's how you want to look at your own transformation as a business owner. There's three distinct patterns to business. It's the build phase, it's the growth phase, and it's the scale phase. You cannot scale in build phase. It's not possible. So, people say, well, I got to, put all these systems and processes in there. I said, but what are you building? We can't put a system or process behind something we don't know what it is. Well, I went to Brendan Burchard, listened to Gary Vee. I heard Grant Cardone. I was drinking the poison from all internet marketers, ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson, and they all say systems. You say, we do the system once we know what we are building.
Yeah.
Let's
strategy, right? You need to have a direction to start with. It's interesting because you need that mission. And, often we talk about mission, vision, goals, and then, looking at roadmap, right? You go at the end. So once you've said that, you go into the end. It's like, okay, for me to achieve that, then I need to do A, B, and C, but you need to test, you need to iterate and test first to make sure there's a market for it. And then you start looking at your operational processes, potentially also at that time, the business model itself, how you are going to make money and make it repeatable before you can actually go and grow. And then growth is always before scaling. And I love people talking, it's like, Sabine, I need to scale. It's like, have we grown first?
It's like, what are we scaling? So that to me is the impatience that a lot of entrepreneurs are having because they just don't know what phase they're in, because they're addicted to their own idea, as they should be, and they're very passionate about it. But that's why, look, we've said this 1,000 times, and we're going to say it another 10,000 times. Every successful person has a coach. I have a coach. I have a high performance coach. And I know that I can't trust everything I think. So I have to constantly work on my mindset and question, is my belief system the right belief system? Or is my belief system the belief system because of a trigger that I have from a trauma from my childhood? So that when I get to X point, I make decisions based on something that's what, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, right? And people do things like that where they believe that what their opinion is the truth, but most of the time it's not. It is your interpretation of what it means. That's in mindset, we call it the story.
Mm-hmm.
So are you holding on to a story that really isn't serving you? Because if you would give up the story, what would that mean? And I'm going to give you one example. It's a very, very, very personal example, but that if I can give your audience one thing to take away, that would be a powerful thing to give away. So I mentioned that I have a lot of trauma in my childhood. So my mother calls me out of absolutely nowhere and says, well, when you were a child, when you were a baby, my doctor didn't like fat babies, so I just didn't feed you enough. And you were crying and whimpering at night. And so my face was exactly like yours. I'm like, who in their own right mind would tell their child this? I mean, so did my abuse start when I was literally a baby because you refused to feed me? And so that was a story that I told myself for a long time, and it was obviously very upset. And then I really thought about this. My mother grew up in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
She was told that men know everything. They're the holder of all informations, and you must at all times do what a man tells you to do. She comes from a time where women weren't allowed to have bank accounts, women weren't making their own decisions. They were completely depending on men, and doctors back then were called gods in white. So this god in white is telling her that, her baby is fat. So she now is feeling compelled because of the way she grew up, what she's been told, her programming, her own trauma. She must follow his advice. But smart as she is, she figured out that he was wrong, went behind his back, and then did feed me something extra because she, couldn't stand me whimpering at night. And then she fed me more. So isn't that amazing on how a woman like that stood up to a god in white? So which version of the story is true?
Yeah. Which version of the story is true? I would say she hopefully fed you at night.
Well,
I
both
hope
of the
that's
stories are true,
true.
right? Both of the
Because she
stories are
was in
true.
some ways impressed by this God in white, but then tried to, at night, I guess, go around the corner behind the back of the God in white and do something that potentially her brain said, I'm not doing it, but I'm doing it, right? So trigger the brain to think differently, potentially. And so that might be, as you said, both stories are right at the same time.
Exactly. And so for an entrepreneur listening to your amazing show, that's the challenge that I would like to give you is the next time you come up with an opinion, challenge that and say, is it true?
Yeah.
Or is there another side to the story that I am not acknowledging or that I don't see because we don't know what we don't know? And that means nothing unless you're in a situation like this where you have to, consciously challenge yourself. And within that, Now, knowing both sides of a story, I can choose what I believe in. So now I can choose to say, I'm dealing with my own trauma by understanding what my mother came from.
Yeah.
And I am at the same time recognizing on how much that has affected my decision making my entire life. This constant fear of whatever trust, safety, and abandonment, which is a lot of entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs because they have to prove something, and they all entrepreneurs are at a higher rate traumatized than any other, let's say profession, because a lot of times we're here to prove something.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that because I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs and I do work as well with corporate and I was in corporate life. And, at some point in time, I decided it's time for me to do my own thing. So I probably need to look into maybe those potential trauma. But one thing I think which I find fascinating as well is looking at the beginning of our conversation, Beate, is we talk about artificial intelligence. And today, most entrepreneurs I talk to would say, well, the investors told me that if I want a successful business, I need to embed AI in my proposition. And I know we are talking now about technology. What's your view around that belief around artificial intelligence being required to build a successful business today?
I think that there's a lot of truth to it, if I'm really honest. As much as I like to say it isn't, but I think we are just at the beginning of it. So if I look at the bell curve, and the bell curve is the graph of, the early adapters
Mm-hmm.
to the laggard majority. So if you have never seen a bell curve, look it up. I believe that AI will change everything in the way we do business. We are much more productive. We're getting a lot more done. We're getting it done faster. We're getting it done better. We, I always refer to AI as the smartest assistant that I never had. But at the same time, I also can tell as over time, as more and more people are using AI, the results, especially on the writing, becoming more and more trite, because a lot of people are using this horrible internet marketing message or this bad sales messaging. So you have to know how to use AI properly. I think that a lot of the processes and systems that you and I are building are going to be improved by AI.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice would I give somebody who is building a business right now? I would definitely say, do not exclude this at all, but say, maybe say as it becomes more predictable in this particular area in sales, or as it becomes more predictable in marketing, or it becomes more proficient in ads, then we are going to utilize, now technologies that are emerging, because I mean, it's going so fast, it's ridiculous, and how
It is.
quickly it is emerging. At the same time, some of the business models that I see are completely already obsolete because of AI. So if you're building something that's not in the cloud and that doesn't have this opportunity, why bother, right? So um, you have to be, you also have to give yourself a reality check. Are you in love with your idea, or is it a viable idea? And then if it's a viable idea, what are we predicting is going to happen? We cannot forget that there's a little bit of wizardry involved right now,
Yeah.
if for lack of a better word, right, Sabine?
Yeah, a bit of
Where
magic, right? And you have to know really how to weigh how to use some of the tools. I mean, there's a lot of tools, and now I think there is a need for orchestration around all the stuff which are out there. But yeah, we talked about prompt engineering, and we need to be really good at asking the system to get the right answer. And a lot of us are not great asking the right question to the system, or being patient to ask the right flow of question to get the right answer. Because often the answers do not come with one single question. You have maybe to ask 5 questions to get the right answer.
that is absolutely correct. So there's a learning component. So I think what you need to demonstrate as an entrepreneur right now is that you understand the medium and that you understand what it's happening. I think most money is going to go into AI. We're going to do with AI what we've done with everything. We're going to go completely bonkers. It's going to be another, .com type of moment where anything AI is going to be going crazy. But you do need to know. I mean, don't do a business now and pretend this isn't happening. This is happening very, 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 very
Indeed.
much so.
Indeed, indeed. So I'm thinking, as we have, just a few moments left, I'm going to ask you two questions. The first one is, if we were going to give the listener in our audience here 3 steps they should be following, a process, a system, things which you use every day to impart knowledge and help the business you're supporting around you, Beate, what would that be? And then my next question is, where could they find you to discover more from you?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, before I go in there, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that wherever you pick up this podcast, please go there now and give Sabine a 5-star review, subscribe, and share this episode with one other person. And the reason it is so important that you do engagement is because AI, as we just talked about, is also now managing everything on the internet. And if we want to help more people, and this is a labor of love, please give some love back, because it is critical to show that at this moment in time. And then I'm going to move to the question. So the 3 things I think that are really, really critical right now is, number one, we already talked about it. Don't try to do everything on your own. It literally will cut you off of everything. I think we're in a very collaborative environment right now where there's a lot of collaborations, partnerships, and mutually beneficial relationships that are emerging, just because it's become so complicated that sometimes you just need another person. The second thing is that I'm seeing is that spirituality is making a huge comeback. So if you're still out there and it's just business, I don't think it's going to work, because we are seeing that people want work-life balance. We're seeing that people are asking, what's in it for me? People have a greater understanding of spiritual principles, of mindset. So make sure that you are also in a place where you pay attention to enjoying the journey, so that it's not just about reaching a goal, but enjoying the journey. And other people that are on with you also want to enjoy the journey. So this like whole baby boomer idea of you got to put 80 hours in so that you can get to 65 as quickly as possible and as broken as possible, and then you have a heart attack 2 years later and you die at 67, is really unappealing for the current generation for very, very good reasons. So I think there's some rethinking also in the way we show up. And the third thing would be is make sure you know what your priorities really are in life, and that we know from mindset that if you are in a mindset with a particular vibration attracts all the good stuff to you. If you're in a perpetually stressed out state and you're perpetually angry and miserable, that's what you're going to be attracting. But if you're allowing this vibration of possibility, then more likely things will become possible for you.
That's amazing. So manifestation and visualization is a conversation I'm having a lot. And, it's interesting you are talking about spirituality, because I'm seeing it as well in London. People are becoming more spiritual. Even in some of the top shop, you now have card readers, which is a new sexy thing. But the most important part, I guess, is being true to oneself. I wanted to add to your comment as well, being clear on your expectations, but also your boundaries. Because
Exactly.
a lot of the US, my US colleague would love to have calls with me during the weekend, but that is one of my boundaries. I do not do work calls during the weekend. So
exactly. And you're still
yeah.
successful. Yeah. And then just to tell the audience where to find me. So I have a quiz. It's called What's Your Talent Worth? So for those of you who are in the early stages and want to figure out, should I not go into the build phase of the business, go to what'syourtalentworth.com. And it's an actual mathematical calculation, and you find out exactly what your earning potential is in this climate. And for anybody else, if you've heard something that interests you, go to uncoverySession.com, schedule a 15-minute call with me. Always happy to throw around a couple of ideas and help in whatever capacity I do. And other than that, I'm pretty much everywhere as the growth architect or under my name, Beate Chelette. Reach out, drop in the DM. Happy to help.
Well, thank you, Beate. And I will have in the note of the podcast, the link to the quiz, also the link to your LinkedIn profile. I'm a LinkedIn girl, so it will be LinkedIn. And then we'll provide as well the link to be able to set up a call with you. Beate, thank you so much for joining me on Scouting for Growth today. Thank you for the recommendation. This is going to be a very downloaded episode, I'm sure.
I hope so. I hope it. And again, make sure you subscribe and like and share. Thank you so much for having me, Sabine. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you to you too. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Scouting for Growth. Please subscribe, share with friends, and leave a 5-star rating. Your rating is so valuable. I review all of them, and my team help me adapt content to meet your needs. Also, connect with me on my preferred channels. I am a B2B growth expert, so you will find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Threads, and X as well as Blue Sky. All information available below. Until next, keep scouting for growth.